On to law and licensing. Chair Hymas.
It was done in the October.
Thank
We're in
you.
action 4, right?
Yep.
4.2.
Yes. So thank you, Chair Moss. We are looking at agenda item 4.2, amendment to data sharing agreement with Navajo Nation. The committee recommends that the board approve the amendment to the data sharing agreement with the Navajo Nation. Looks like one of you are taking over.
Okay, are there any questions over this item? Any questions? Seeing no questions, let's move to a vote. All right, we've got
So we're starting with October 6th.
Member Green is a yes.
Member Green, thank you, is a yes.
I did. So we're starting on the 6th.
Is Chair Moss? Okay, the only one we're missing is Chair Moss, so that
Yeah.
passes 12
Yeah, because they
to 2 with Klein and Bogus as a no and Chair Moss absent. That passes. Thank you for being here with us today. We have a guest here, but we didn't have any questions, so thank you. All right, next.
Thank you. Agenda item 4.3, research data sharing agreement with Westat. The committee recommends that the board approve the research data sharing agreement with Westat.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions about the data sharing agreement with Westat? Seeing none, let's move to a vote. Member Green?
Member Green is a yes.
I'm sorry, Member Green, it didn't come through.
No.
No? Member Green is a no? All right, all votes are in. That passes 10 to 5 with Green, Carey, Klein, Earl, and Bogus as a no. Thank you. Moving on to the next item.
Agenda item 4.4, UC, actually, yeah, we're going to go to agenda item 4.5.1. This is R277-114, corrective action and withdrawal or reduction of program funds. This is a repeal and reenact. The committee recommends that the board approve R277-114, corrective action and withdrawal or reduction of program funds, draft 2 on second and final reading. And I also have an additional amendment or a motion if that pleases
in order.
the board.
That is in order.
I would like to send this back to committee. So I move that we send this back to committee. Not that I appreciate the additional work, but with the information that has come in from, yeah, we need to, you're right.
Yeah, me too.
There's my motion. May I speak to it?
Yes.
With the additional information that has come in, I think more work needs to happen on this. And it's not overwhelming, but it is from different sides and valid points across the board. So I do think it would warrant another look to take some of the suggestions and feedback that we have received from constituents, from organizations, from board members, and from staff members as well.
Okay, discussion to that motion. Let me just clarify, would that be sent to committee tomorrow or in December? What's your intent in the motion?
My preference would be to December.
Okay, so the motion is to refer back to committee for its December meeting. Discussion to that motion. Member, Vice Chair Earl and Member Lear. Yeah. Member Lear.
So I just want to make sure, this is R277-114, right, Matt? And I just wanted to hear briefly from probably Deputy Superintendent Stallings, who's been working with our consultant on that, and make sure that's something that she is comfortable with, anticipates, and hear her opinion on that, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Deputy Stallings.
Thank you, Chair Moss. No objection at all to having more discussion and it being referred back to committee. There's not a tight timeline that we're trying to meet, other than, I think at one point we were trying to get this in place before the session, but if it goes to committee in December, there's still an opportunity to approve it before the session.
Okay. And just a short follow-up.
Yes.
Do you feel like there are still substantive issues aside from just minor wording? I mean, do you feel like there's still substantive issues that need to be resolved, just in your opinion?
I do have about 5 or 6 motions prepared right now, and so I believe there is a desire for some people to make amendments and discuss those. And whether it's today, it would probably take some time here, or it could be moved back to committee and we could take the time there.
As opposed to taking the time here. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your opinion.
Okay, further comment, discussion of the motion. Member Bogus, Member Klein, and, Member Earl.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
So
Vice
do you
Earl.
want, are we sending our recommended motions to committee for next month, right? We're not bringing those up now. So if we pass this, then we would just send those on. Board members would, right? Okay.
Oh, yes, please.
I would just like to comment on Member Earl's question there. Yes, please, right? Too many times we forego committee or we look past it. Let us discuss it. Let us look at it. There'll still be an opportunity in full board meeting the following month. But yeah, let the committee do some work. And please, any suggestions, any thoughts, let us hear them and let us discuss them. Thank you.
All right, Member Bogus and Member Klein.
I just support the
no.
motion. I have many amendments. Thank you.
And Member Klein.
I also support the motion. I just had a question for Deputy Superintendent Stallings.
Sure.
As far as the comment that we're not in a rush, but it sounded like you were wanting it to be ready in time for the session. Is there a reason that you wanted it in time for the session? Is there pending, is there a bill related to this? Is there something that you wanted it done by that time?
Thank you, Chair. May I?
Yes, please.
I think, and board members, you may remember, or maybe you didn't see, but I did send an email yesterday with some background information on the why behind the work that actually has been in process for over a year. Talked about it briefly with the audit committee at times as audits have come out. You'll notice in that background, there are quite a few audits that are cited as the reasons, many of the reasons for the framework, which I believe will provide more clarity and transparency to policymakers. And so one of the reasons why I would say it could be helpful before the session begins is it provides a common language or way of approaching and discussing things that in some ways simplifies expectations. And as we have legislators who may be working on new programs and there may be a question about what level of USB oversight versus local control they would like the new program to have, I believe the framework can be a very powerful tool in having common language and setting those expectations up from the beginning and setting then the program up for success to allow USBE staff to meet those expectations and or discuss, what it would take to move the needle. So that is the only reason why the framework, I believe, could be helpful before the session, is to help those discussions of setting expectations and being very clear about what people expect USBE's role to be.
Chair Hymas. Oh. Matt.
Thank you. I see that we have another comment. I just wanted to ask a question of Deputy Stallings, if I need to, in your opinion, because these two, this next action item, R277-100, was in the same agenda item. Would it be beneficial to keep those together? Okay, so can I amend the motion, hopefully without objection, to just send the USBE oversight framework with its 2 action items back to committee.
No objection? Okay. It's amended.
Yeah, so we'll keep those 2. Thank you.
Includes 114 and 100. So, Member Davis? Right.
I'll support the amendment with hopes that people who have input will send it to the committee so that we can get a product when we come back. This is a great transparency tool. And we are consistently being asked for better, more clear communication. And this tool is great. And we happen to have a contractor who used to be a legislative drafter, but ironically is also a parent who had a big complaint and frustration about this kind of misunderstanding of who was doing what on a certain piece of code versus rule versus implementation. And she ironically is the person who's kind of looked at all of these things and said, look, you could have a lot better communication for parents, for lawmakers, for board members, if we could get some common language. And, you know, a lot of people don't know that, but that's a parent issue that I had to work through for many, many hours because there wasn't this kind of common understanding of who was doing what. And anyway, so I hope we can get this done quickly,
Thank you. Deputy Stallings?
but well.
Thank you, Vice Chair Davis, for those comments. I did want to clarify my role as well as our contractor's role in this rule. I have prepared all of the amendments today personally. She has not. Not that Tracy has been a very integral part of all of this work, but I don't want the board to believe that it has been requested, pushed, or advocated for by our contractor. These discussions began more than a year ago, beginning with some discussions related, for example, to the Teacher and Student Success Act and some differences of opinion, of expectations related to USBE's role. And some of you who are on the audit committee and had some discussions related to one of those audits may remember that probably over a year ago, I discussed how it could be very helpful to have levels of oversight that we could then have as a common language to then make sure we're on the same page with lawmakers. It also happened that Tracy, whose primary role has been to prepare the master legal requirements project, as she was providing those legal requirements, she found that there were often ambiguity and overlap of whether it was USBE's role or the locals, the LEA's role in certain areas. And so even to help with the master legal requirements and provide more transparency and access to expectations on the locals, that we felt that both of kind of these needs that I had identified and that she had identified could be helped by the oversight framework. So we really have been working on this hand in hand. Tracy has a wonderful ability of structuring and providing system in rule format. But Board Member Davis stated, she was the attorney on the education team for the legislature who was responsible for the recodification of Title 53A to 53E, F, and G. So she was very familiar with the structure of the Utah Code, which helps a lot when we're talking about the structure of our rules. But I did want to make sure that you all knew that every step of the way, this rule, I have been supportive of, I've been overseeing, I've been giving the approval and actually pushed back on some things. And so I just don't want to give the impression that this is something that's coming from an outside contractor. She was, and again, I apologize if I'm giving too much context here, but many of the board members were not here when the board did approve carry forward funding for me to contract with Ms. Nuttall. And it was really in this effort to reduce burdens on LEAs, to provide more clarity, reduce our assurances document, which will be coming in January, February. And at the time, we knew we needed additional staff capacity to make it happen. And we will have a new website design that will provide more access to requirements. And hopefully that context helps. I am 100% familiar and ready to support you with this rule, and happy to answer your questions and support.
All right, thank you. So the motion is to refer back to committee both 114 and 100. Member, is that Lear or Reels light? Okay. Gotcha.
Now?
Yep.
I just, uh, Member Davis prompted the thought that I have had that I will support, especially because Deputy Stallings supports this being referred back to committee. But I also think this is a idea, a concept that is way overdue. And I don't support this going back to committee to being, in order to be held month after month after month, so that we can't move forward and see how this works. I think it is one of the more innovative things we've really done in a long time, and it's going to take a little bit of time to overlay it on our legislative requests and see what works and what doesn't. It's going to be a work in progress, and I really appreciate the Deputy Stallings and our consultant have been willing to undertake this because it's not going to be easy. So I think delaying it until it's perfect would be a bad idea. And so I will support this. I would like to discuss it further in committee rather than endlessly talk about it today, but I really want to move it forward after next month. That's a real strong feeling I have of this is way overdue and a really helpful idea, but it will take some cooperation, some trust, and we need to start working on it so it can get better. So Cindy prompted that idea. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Straight, excuse me. We've got Straight and then Carey and then Davis.
Thank you. I do appreciate all the work that has happened since the last lawn licensing committee up to today. But to be honest, I was somewhat dreading the conversation, not because I'm not willing to engage in that conversation, but because we need to be effective and efficient. And I think by putting this back to committee, it's more effective. I believe it's more efficient, or at least that's my hope, that we'll be efficient when it comes back to the full board. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Carey and then Member Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favor of moving this back to committee. And that's primarily based on when this appeared before committee the first time, it was my understanding that the impetus for this was coming from the legislature, that they were the ones pushing for this, saying we needed it. But then I watched the interim education committee, and it seemed like they had a de minimis or no interest in this infrastructure. So I do appreciate Deputy Stallings. I asked, and she was kind enough to offer a response to the history, how this came to be. But I support the motion because I'd like to pursue how this came about, why we're doing it, and so I would support the motion.
Member Davis.
I just want to quickly say I did not want to misrepresent her at all. The whole impetus from this came from our own reports and requirements task force. But I found it ironic that had we had this tool, it would have saved about 20 hours of work trying to siphon out who did what and legislative intent and who was talking to whom. If we would have had this back then when we were working on that very parent issue we were working on with her, ironically.
All right, thank you all. I'll just add this was also discussed extensively in the focus group over the summer on oversight. So we got, it's been a balancing of the too loose, too tight that we've talked about a little bit, and I think Deputy Stallings has tried to address both of those sides in something that's got the right balance. So I support the motion sending it back. No further lights on. Let's vote. The motion is then, let's make sure we've got two, okay. The board. That the board refer R277-114 and R277-100, the oversight framework, back to committee, which would be the lawn licensing committee. Members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Okay. That's unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you. Back to you, Chair Hymas.
Thank you, Chair. we are moving on from agenda item 4 and on to agenda item 5. This is a combination of the October 3rd and October 19th law and licensing meetings. Agenda item 5.3. This is R277-217, Educator Standards and LEA Reporting. 217. You'll have to forgive me. My notes say no motion for the board. There is a motion, I know. Is it on the screen? Okay. Okay, so the motion that came out of committee is that the board approve R277-217 Educator Standards and LEA Reporting Draft 4 on second and final reading.
Okay, thank you. We've got Member Lear. Light on.
And I have a motion.
Okay, that is in order.
And I would look at, let me bring it up quickly. Draft 4 we're looking at, right?
Yes.
And I would look at lines 199 through 205. And my motion would be to strike lines 199 through 205 totally, and then another just a cleanup change, if those lines are struck, would be on line 209, I think, that we would change subsections 1 to just say subsection 1, and that may be no need for subsection. So whatever change would be to strike the or 2A on line 209. And that would be my motion, and I'll speak to it when you're ready.
Is there a second? Second from Member Booth. Back to you. Yes, let's hear her speak to the motion.
The committee worked hard on this. I worked with Member Hymas. The committee had a lot of, I thought, really healthy discussion before and after the meeting. And I've thought a lot about this issue before this discussion and after we had our committee meeting. And I cannot bring myself to do this to teachers. I'm frustrated because I felt like we had a bad option and a worse option. And I myself participated in what I feel like was the bad option, or the less than satisfactory option. And we came up with this compromise. But having talked to some teachers, I think it's unfortunate that we didn't have a single discussion as a group with teachers. Apparently there were lots of small meetings, but as a group, we didn't hear each other's opinions. We didn't hear the opinions of teachers. We didn't hear the opinions of administrators. And I feel like we made this quite onerous, frankly, and quite targeted, these quite targeted changes in a vacuum. And I was never comfortable with that. So having said that, I would like to strike the lines that I mentioned and go back to the process that's essentially currently in place. There's further clarification of the process that's in place in lines 209 through 216, which is fine. That's essentially putting in rule the procedures that UPAC follows when it follows up with LEAs who've taken administrative action. So I'm fine with those additions, but I just cannot live with the intimidation this puts in teachers' lives. And I also, despite having heard from some staff members that this will not be additional work, UPAC is already a year behind in terms of its investigations. That is unfair to the educators who are being investigated. So I cannot see how this will not put that process further behind, in addition to the fact that we've had literally a revolving door of investigators, which is not going to be helped by adding to their burden. So I feel like for now, we need to strike these lines, keep the system as clean and effective as it has been, and move forward with this.
Okay, Member Bogus.
I have no comment on this motion, Chair. I
Okay.
just have a motion myself.
Member Davis.
Thank you. I'm in queue to make my own amendments actually, but I will speak to this motion, Chair, and ask a question if it's okay.
Sure.
Would it be a friendly amendment to this motion? I mean, if you did strike that, would you need to reinstate the lines that actually Cindy Phillips in her email to the board recommended to reinstate at the bottom of her email? If you were to strike these lines, would you need to reinstate those lines to go back to what the typical reporting is for the criminal activity types of things?
Email but didn't read it. Lines 206 through 208 is what she would reinstate.
If that fits with draft 4, I don't know if that was from draft 3 or draft 4, but
This is draft 4.
yeah, I mean, I think we would need to figure out which lines those are to reinstate. But I'll speak to the motion. It's not for the same reasons that Member Lear spoke to it, but I just feel like when we add more and more, and we're looking at now what seems like could be almost 100% of the parental complaints, then we lose and water down and dilute the focus on the 10% that are extremely concerning for student safety. And we deal with those on a monthly basis, all of us in this room, and they are like terrifying. It's my least favorite part of working on this board, but it's probably the most important because we have a responsibility to keep students safe. So I would support this motion in an effort to maintain a focus on that.
Can I just
Okay,
want a
Vice Chair Earl.
point of information real quick.
But I want to stay in line for my amendments.
Okay, I just trying to understand, you're supporting this, but then you want to bring language back up possibly after.
No, if it's a friendly amendment, I think she just needs to, if you strike this, you have to put back in.
You can't put
Those-
back in if you've stricken it. That's what I want clarification on.
It's different line. It's the
It's a different-
lines that Cindy Phillips suggested putting back in her email to us.
Well, let's see if this passes. I think this,
Okay.
there's a
It
lot
would
of people
include
in
putting
line.
back those lines.
So
if
there,
it's
there I
friendly.
think are other.
Okay, I just want to make
amendments.
sure we're not trying to do something that we can't technically do.
I could request, I'm assuming, to amend my own motion.
Well, it belongs to the body. Yeah. So if
It's friendly.
what's the amendment? If there's a friendly without objection, then we could add it to the motion. But what's specific? I mean, we've referenced an email, but I think
It's
we need
lines
the lines and the
222
language.
to 224 of draft 3, but you'd reinstate it into draft
Okay.
225 to 227. In draft 4, it's 225 to 227.
And yes, I think that is a friendly amendment, and I would add that to my motion.
Any objection to that? Okay, so the motion
Quick
is
question.
framed up. Yes, Member Green. Is that Member Green?
Yeah. Yes, that is. I was just wondering, is there a way to bring up that motion maybe here on my screen? I just need to see what motion it that kind of got built on, and I don't have anything in front of me. I'm trying to write it down, but I'm not keeping up with
So
where we're at.
can you see the screen, Member Green? There's language that was deleted previously from draft 3. The proposal is to restore. Right.
I'm here in Civic Clerk, so I have these drafts pulled up. I just didn't know if maybe somebody can just take a picture of it and send it to me on their phone.
So it's in draft 4. At the end of draft 4, it's lines 225 to 27 are showing currently being stricken. It would restore those three lines, correct? Did you say 225 to 227? The motion as amended would restore those three lines that had been deleted from prior drafts, if I'm saying that right.
Okay. Okay, so I have that pulled up.
Okay.
All right.
So the
Thank
motion
you.
as stated is to delete lines 199 to 205 and restore lines 225 to 227. All right, back to the lineup. Member Straight?
Yes, Chair. Would Board Member Lear yield to some questions?
Some?
One and a half.
Sure.
Okay.
Would you?
Sure she would.
You mean yield, meaning that she would be the one you'd like to ask the
I
questions
would like to
to?
ask some questions to her.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay.
Take it away.
So, Board Member Lear, you said in your statement that you weren't willing to do this to teachers. Can you help me understand that a little better? What you mean by that?
Yes, I think that's a very good question because I think that was very shorthand. I feel like that subjecting to teachers to investigations for anything that a parent complains about, even if it moves up the food chain and comes from the superintendent or charter school director, makes for not only a lot of work for UPAC staff, but I also think it greatly intimidates teachers in all they say and do. And I feel like the standard that existed for UPAC before, where there had to be some administrative discipline, which is really a low bar. It's a warning, anything that happens that's administrative discipline was reasonable to teachers. The teachers has had an opportunity to respond, to work with the LEA, to have his or her say, and then that moves on to UPAC. I feel like the idea that any parent complaint becomes not just possibly an employment buster, but a career buster is really an unfair situation for educators. Without more consideration from the whole field of policymakers who work with teachers in the classroom every day.
That cover the information you're looking for, Member Straight? Okay, back to Member Hymas and Member Carey. Is that who we've got? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I speak against the motion. And I don't think it's a surprise, but we did work on this. We came up with a good balance. For me, I think this helps parents feel heard and recognized, but at the same time, it allows educators, if there is an accusation, for me, if there's an accusation against me, it's clear it up, get it out of the way, right? Let's take care of it and move on. I think what this does is it really provides transparency to some of the concerns that we've had out there. I'm in the business of hanging on to good educators as well. I think we all are, and we want to do our very best, and we want to keep people coming to our schools at the same time. Our clients are our students or our families, right? And so I think this provides a good balance, excuse me, of working with families and educators in order to proceed in a way that provides transparency and an avenue that can help both, again, families and educators move on from any issues. So I speak against the motion. I'd like to keep it as is.
Thank you, Member Hymas. Member Carey?
Yeah, I would speak against the motion as well, for several of the reasons that Board Member Hymas just alluded to, but I'm also putting myself in queue for a separate motion. Thank you.
Right, but later. Okay, Member Bogus, did you have a light on for this motion? No, you're for later. Member Straight, are you on this one?
Some good explanations from both sides of this view. There's still one question in my mind that is weighing me one way or the other, because I really am at an impasse, because I do see value in promoting professional standards. But I wonder in my mind where this best lies. And where do we draw the line on what gets reported up? If it's everything, I think most problems are best handled at the lowest level possible, at the school level, and even just with teacher and parent. Anyway, I'm struggling with that element of this argument.
I'll say one thing, and I think what came out of the committee was a really helpful clarification that what would be referred to UPAC for their awareness and then potential review and action after the LEA has done its investigation would be complaints from a parent that the conduct violated the state standards. So it's not any complaint, it's only parent complaints, and it's not any parent complaint. It's those that go to these enumerated standards that teachers are expected to follow as a condition of licensure. So I thought, I'll just say what came out of committee, because I wasn't there, was a very solid clarification. With that, I don't see any further lights. Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see the green up there. Member Norton.
I just wanted to make a comment because I'm feeling some of that same conflict. I think that Board Member Straight is, but as I listened today and read and thought, I have to agree with Chair Hymas in that we are all in the business of trying to keep good teachers, but at the same time, which I think those LEAs are at the pivotal corner or circle, the centristic little, I can't even talk right now, my brain is fubbled. But they're right there in the middle of the hurricane, and no one wants to keep them more than they do. But at the same time, no one wants to get rid of them if they're the bad apple more than an LEA. And I think that UPAC is a wonderful tool. It gives the final legal answer. But I do think that the investigative work needs to first happen at the LEA level, and then if UPAC needs to be brought in, then they're brought in.
Could I briefly respond? That is what the current draft does. Is that what you're speaking to? The current draft only brings in UPAC after the LEA has done its role. So just point of clarification. Well, that doesn't start an investigation. So if I could, it says that the UPAC will defer further investigation pending the LEA's determination of possible LEA discipline, lines 204, 205. So a lot of what's been worked out over the last couple months makes clear that you don't just start UPAC going. The LEA just says, we got this and we're looking at it. And then they say, okay, here's what we did. Meanwhile, UPAC has visibility, but they don't do anything. So there's, yes, that was, I think, something that Director Rasmussen worked on to make sure there was not an overlap.
Because I thought that with that, the LEA got it, but then within 72 hours, they had to refer it to UPAC. So that's where I was thinking too.
Sorry. Yeah, they give UPAC notice that they got it and they're doing something with it. They don't turn it over to UPAC. UPAC holds it so that they know what's out there, what parent complaints are there that go against these standards, but then they hold and defer. That was I think a couple, I can't remember when Director Rasmussen helped with that, but that was the point of lines 204, 205. UPAC sits on it, and then if they decide this could warrant a second look because these are already teacher conduct standards that they agree to as a matter of licensing, then UPAC could, if needed, take a second look. But meantime, hands off, leave it to the LEA. That was the intent of a lot of the work that went in. All right, sorry to step in. I just had familiarity with Director Rasmussen's involvement there. Let's see, do I have other lights and
Me-
in what
one
order?
more.
Chair, well, member Bogus, member, oh, I don't know. Let's see. No, Lear. There you go. I'm sorry, we got a few that are in line. I don't want to kick anybody out. Are you in line to speak
Okay,
to this?
mine is still to this, a little bit of a rebuttal to that. Yes, and I would have to respectfully disagree with Chair Moss, because UPAC having that complaint is different than UPAC not having that complaint. If a complaint were made against me and it was just being held, I would still be very troubled by that as a teacher. So I don't feel like it satisfies the concern of teachers to say, oh, we're just holding it. Because that information could likely be found under grandma. There's also some concern that if that person tried to change jobs, what would be the nature of that ability to change jobs? So I don't think, though the intent may have been or may be from some members to say this is held by UPAC, it is still in UPAC's position and possession, I should say. So I respectfully disagree that the words of this say UPAC has the complaint, regardless of defer, regardless of held, regardless of what the intent might be. And that would trouble me if I were a teacher in the field, knowing that a body that had control of my career had a complaint against me, even if there were a process or words in place that said, we will wait till the LAA has its way with you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hart, I'll just say, the language says defer. I think some members have suggestions about expungement or other items, but the concern is that it shouldn't affect a teacher if nothing's done. And I think that's, from what I've heard, everybody's intent, whether through this language or others. Vice Chair Hart, did you have?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate really what I said in committee. At the end of the day, this is a data collection item. We in education like to say there's, these problems are overblown. There's not the widespread problem that some people would like to think or believe is out there, but yet we don't do anything to collect the information. We don't do anything to collect the data. We don't do anything to have a check on our processes. We just say, trust us, it's not out there. I am an educator, and I am fully aware that many people have data on me, and my actual license already sits with USBE. I find it, I just don't believe that all of a sudden UPAC having a record that there was a complaint is in any way, it just seems distrustful that we're going to do something with information if we don't have a reason to. And I don't understand why we can't, why we're willing to collect all kinds of data on all kinds of other things and all kinds of data on students, but we rail at keeping data on our teachers. That just seems so, take data everywhere else, send it all over wherever, but whoa, a teacher making a complaint or a parent making a complaint and not doing anything on it, it just, I want the rule to stand as is.
Thank you. Member Carey, were you speaking to this motion? You're in line? Okay. We have no other lights for this motion. So the motion is that the board strike lines 199 to 205, update line 209 to strike or to E, is that an E? A, thank you, and reinstate lines 225 to 227. Let's vote.
Green is a no.
Member Green is a no. Thank you. That motion fails by 9-6. The yeses being members Booth, Straight, Norton, Reel, Davis, and Lear. Okay, back to, well, let's see, who's in line? The floor was open for discussion, and we had a number of people queued up for motions. Did you keep the? I think that sounds right. Member Davis, to you.
I sent my 2 little motions to Ben. Thank you. I move that the board remove ideological from 994, and I'd like to speak to the motion.
Sorry, I'm not on. Yes, back to you, Member Davis, to speak to the motion.
Thank you. This is not defined. I contacted committee members and said, how are you defining ideological? And with no definition, we're kind of left to general understanding, which is ideas. So I think we either need to define it or we need to remove it, because this is putting a very unclear expectation into board rule. If the concern, I mean, let's just be honest, the 2 that we've heard the most of have been critical race theory and gender identity. Gender identity is called out specifically already in another place in this rule. So that is already covered. And, you know, we could talk about critical race theory. We have a whole board rule about that in 328. But if that's what it is, then say what it is, but don't leave these general, widespread, you know, any idea is subject to your license being on the line now if it somehow isn't written somewhere in your LEA policy. I mean, it's untenable.
Okay, discussion to that motion.
94.
Let's see, we're getting a little
And
confused
then I have,
with our.
can I
speaking of
do
the
both
motion,
of them
sure.
together? I have, and then my other one was that the board replace within 72 hours of receiving the allegation.
You know what? Let's separate those if we can. You're talking about back in the UPAC part, right?
These are both in the UPAC, but
Well, the first one is into the substance of the standards. Why don't we hit that first and
Okay.
focus the debate on that one if we can, and reserve the 72 hours?
okay.
Is that
I was just
okay?
trying to
Let's-
go faster, but
No, I hear. I
by
just think
combining,
the,
but I'll
the
do whatever
debate
you
might
want,
be
however you want.
muddled if we're going back and forth on the 2 related separate topics.
Okay.
So, okay.
that's fine.
Back to line up for comments. Sorry, we're distinguishing waiting. Member Wood. To this? Oh, Member Klein? Is this to ideological? Okay.
Okay. Oh, I see where you're talking. Are you talking about lines 88 through 89, where it says invite, suggest, or encourage a student to
No, I
reconsider?
think she's down on
Or
ideological
87.
94.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying she referenced, it's already on 80, it says gender identification on line 87, but you can't discriminate. That's the list of things you can't discriminate against or not allow students to participate in any program because of that. It doesn't mean that. Well, right below that, it says invite, suggest, or encourage a student to reconsider or change the student's sexual orientation or gender identity. But yes, but that doesn't, the ideological part speaks to what a student or a teacher, they can't use their position to promote those things or endorse those things.
The question or the motion is whether to define or remove the word ideological.
So
correct?
it doesn't,
So-
I'm just saying what Board Member Davis is, the line she's referring to doesn't say anything about an educator not being able to promote promote ideological things. And so,
Hold on, let me just, okay, do you want to put that back to Member Davis for response?
go ahead and respond. I don't, yeah.
Member Davis?
Draft 4.
I am.
And what line are you looking at?
So 87 and 88, sorry, 87 and 89 both refer to gender identity, but that's not, it doesn't speak to the fact that an educator cannot endorse, promote, or disparage those things like it says in the section where it says where ideological is used. So maybe instead of ideological, if that's what people are referring as ideological or assuming is the definition of that we just replace ideological with gender or like critical, and just put all of the different ones in there that we're concerned about: critical race theory, sexual orientation, or gender identity.
Chair, can I just want to respond first
Yes,
to the
let's,
first part.
let's make
before
sure
we
we
get
got
too
them
far
order,
into it.
but yeah, let's put that to Member Davis.
So, as far as endorse, promote, or disparage, the disparage part is covered in the above list with the protected classes, but the endorse and promote part, I believe, is covered in 88, where you can't invite, suggest, or encourage a person's gender identity. You can't do anything that would be considered suggesting or encouraging or inviting any kind of gender identity. So that's covered there.
But may I respond? But in 93 through 95, it says educators can't use their position to promote those things. That's different than invite, suggest, or encourage a student to reconsider or change their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Okay.
Those are
then
two different things.
I'm going to make a friendly amendment, hopefully, to my thing and change line 24. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
In line 88, number 24, I'm going to change the word invite to promote.
Sorry, which line is this?
Line 88. I'm going to change the word invite
So that would be a separate
To promote.
section. We're
as part of
trying to
this
keep it-
motion. As part of this motion.
So that would be promote, suggest, or encourage?
Natalie, would that
Let's hear
cover
that.
your concern?
So on 88, if you added promote, that would be great.
So I would replace invite to promote or suggest. Suggest and promote mean the exact same
But
thing to
that's
me.
specific to an individual student and not the classroom as a whole. So it's still,
Okay. Well,
but I mean,
I think all the class is made up of individual students. So I mean, I'll just leave it as is, and we can vote. People can vote yes or no, and if it doesn't pass, that's fine.
So let me just make sure I've clarified after the back and forth. We had a friendly amendment from the maker. Well, she made it, so if there's an objection, then it won't be friendly. Okay, so there's been an objection. That means we'd have to move to amend Member Davis's motion to include the word invite.
If
Replace the word
that's not
invite with
going to work
promote.
for
So
them, let's just forget it and
let's
go back
pull
to
that
my
back.
original.
Okay, so let's pull that back. There was an objection to making that a friendly. So it just goes through line
Well, you objected.
94. Remove ideological from line 94. Let's hold up for a sec. We're bombarding our drafter. Yeah, there's a few out there. We don't have one. Adopt one. All right, let's see. So we have, back to the original motion to amend, which is that the board remove ideological from line 94. Was it remove or define, or is this one
It's just
remove?
To remove.
To remove,
But because
okay.
in light of
All
not
right.
having a definition, we need to get it out.
Got it. Okay. Further discussion to the pending motion. Member Wood, are you speaking to this? Okay. I guess, Member Norton, sorry, there we go.
I am speaking to this because to me, ideological could be any ideas that I might have. It could be, I think that we should have a positive influence and attitude today. It could be, I really don't like Halloween and I really wish we didn't have to have candy on this day. there's a million things that could be my ideology. And to say that, that's going to be something I can lose a license over or have issues with. I understand partisan issues and could not agree more, religious, denominational, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But ideological is just way too broad, and I feel like that is unconstitutional.
Thank you, Member Norton. I'll throw one point, unless there are other lights. There are various definitions. One from Britannica is the set of ideas and beliefs of a group or political party. That has some definition to it. So that might be, I don't know that I'm proposing that as a friendly, but one option would be political party would be, group would not. And so some of the defined groups, I'll just say some of the concerns that I've heard, and I assume others have heard, are the particular groups that might not be a political party, but might have an ideological mission that might be promoted, and that the idea would be we just focus on ideas and not the ideology of a group. So I'll hold that. That might be something that we address if this motion is not carried. But anybody else, discussion to the pending motion on ideological? I don't see any further lights. Okay, let's tee up the vote then. The motion is to amend draft 4 that the board remove ideological from line 94.
Green is a no.
Sorry, green's a no. Okay. That motion passes 9-6. The noes being Moss, Earl, Carey, Green, Bogus, and Klein. That passes. Thank you, Member Davis. You had a second.
I move that the board replace within 72 hours of receiving the allegation to within 30 days of receiving the allegation on line 202. And I'd like to speak to the motion.
I'll second. I don't hear another second unless, okay, I'll second. Back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really am thinking through this one from the perspective of sitting on the Reports and Requirements Task Force and looking at the same information would be shared, but it would be shared, you would potentially cut your reporting burden in half by, instead of reporting twice, one at the 72 hours, and then again after the investigation's done. Instead, you would report one time, this was the complaint, and if you were prompt in investigating the complaint, you'd cut your reporting time down, and you would say, this is the result of the investigation. Chair Moss, I'm just going to quote you from earlier today. You were explaining in a different part of the rule that there is a potential review after the LEA has done its investigation. If nothing is happening between the time the complaint is made and the investigation's been done, we should not require a bifurcated reporting situation. So I think it just makes it a little more realistic to implement. Even still, it's going to be hard to show up in that meeting with all these increased requirements, but it does mitigates it some. Thanks.
Thank you. And yes, I concur. I think it would help to reduce reporting while still having the functions that we've discussed, the benefits of. All right, so let's see, Member Lear and Wood to this, or is Wood still in line for something else? Member Lear to the 30-day?
I also very much support this, especially, I had concerns about even 72 hours, but now that we've added on line 200, notify UPAC and the educator, that does away with my blacklist concern because the educator knows that he's being complained against. So I do support this 30 longer time period.
Okay, others to this motion? The rest are all motions. Anybody just a old-fashioned physical hand if you're waiting to speak to this motion. If not, we will vote. The motion is that the board replace within 72 hours of receiving the allegation to within 30 days of receiving the allegation on line 202. Board members, please vote.
Green is a no.
Green is a no. Member Green, could
Correct.
you say? Oh, sorry. I'll be quiet. All right, we heard correct. Your vote's a no. Okay. All right, voting is complete. That motion passes 12-3. The no votes are members Bogus, Green, and Klein. Back to the lineup for motions. I think Vice Chair Hart is keeping the order. Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a motion, and I'll defer to staff as to where it would be most appropriate to insert it. But the motion I would like to make is, if you can call it up, I pre-submitted it, and that is that the board directs staff to establish a retention schedule for records of unsupported allegations of misconduct not to exceed 2 years prior to destruction. And if I could speak to that motion.
Is there a second? Second. Back to you, Member Carey.
So this is I guess, like a due process concern that I have, which is we have all these allegations, and I agree that we've limited those to a certain subset, which I think was wise, but they're still going to UPAC. And I've been speaking to Director Rasmussen about, well, how long do those allegations stay on record? An eternity is a long time. So I said, well, could we do something about it? And he said, yes. And I've worked with Director Rasmussen on this language, which would ensure that if the allegation is unsupported, after 2 years, these records would be destroyed and they couldn't be used at a subsequent proceeding in any shape, form, or fashion. Thank you.
Discussion of that motion. I might, I'll go to Member Straight, and I'll.
Oh, you are for this? Okay.
So I'd like to make an amendment. So there was a hint, well, I'll speak to it later. The amendment would be it would be immediately destroyed, there would be no time period, and I'll speak to that if I have a second.
Second. Back to you, Member Straight.
All right, so I kind of got ahead of myself for a little bit, but there was a hint in the discussion prior from that these could become cumulative. If it's unsupported, it's unsupported. Unsupported allegations cannot become cumulative. In other words, we have 3 unsupported allegations, there must be something there. If it's unsupported, it's unsupported. I support the motion in general. I think it's headed the right direction, but I think it should be immediately destroyed if it's unsupported.
Discussion to that motion. Member Lear.
And I do support the idea of this. I'm concerned that Member Carey's explanation was different than these words. A retention schedule doth not a expungement make, if you get my drift. And a retention schedule establishes how long records will be maintained. And it sounded to me like Member Carey said that if there that even if unsupported, they would be maintained for 2 years. But then I'm not sure what would happen after that. Would not to exceed 2 years prior to destruction. I would just feel better, and I'm not sure that the language that Brent has added is it satisfies me. And I'm sort of talking in circles now. I'm sorry, but my point is that if it's unsupported, it should leave the island totally.
I didn't say I.
Because I don't, even for 2 years, I don't want unsupported allegations collected to be used against a person. And I'm afraid that the motion doesn't say that. That might have been Member Carey's intent. But I think I'd prefer clearer language, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so Director Rasmussen's with us. If we want to turn to him or Member Carey, did you want to respond to Member Lear first?
Just briefly. Yeah, it's my understanding that there would be nothing to expunge because it's an unsupported allegation. But the intent, as I understand it, was that any of these allegations which were forwarded to UPAC, to the extent that they were unsupported, after 2 years, they would be destroyed, permanently removed from the possession, control, or maintenance of UPAC. And I would defer to the chair and the director to address that.
Can we put that to Director Rasmussen for how this might work? And I guess there's questions here of what's unsupported and determined to be unsupported by the LEA, by UPAC. If UPAC decided to take a look, what would that be under this language?
So, thank you, Chair. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. The reason why I suggested the language that I did to Board Member Carey is that I think the intent was that even though there would be some LEA investigations that would find the allegations unsupported, there may be limited circumstances when UPAC would still look and say, well, we want to look at this aspect, or we want to open this case nonetheless. And so I think saying that we have to immediately destroy the records of unsupported allegations, I guess then it comes down to what an unsupported allegation is. If we have the language that Board Member Carey suggested, or even something lower like a year or 6 months, it still gives UPAC the chance to follow up on those if it deems necessary before the retention schedule expires and we need to get rid of the record.
Thank you, Director Rasmussen. And that would be my understanding of the rule, is that UPAC holds, but then could take a look. And so we don't want destruction before UPAC has had that opportunity. Well, the 30 days for the LEA to notify UPAC. UPAC then waits to see what the LEA does. If UPAC decides to take a second look, then they could decide if it's substantiated or not as drafted. So, all right, I'm not speaking for or against. I'm just clarifying the process. Member, who's up next? Member Klein? All right. And I think we might have had Member Davis in. Get Member Davis?
I have a substitute motion. I mean, I would speak to either of those motions. I think they're both good. But
Oh, hold
that's
on.
an amendment. Can I have
Let's
do a
make sure
substitute?
we're in order here. So we have an amendment to an amendment.
And can I do a substitute?
No, because it's the third action.
I think that's a third.
Okay, well then can I speak to this? If anyone wants to
yes.
withdraw their amendments, then I might move that once UPAC determines not to investigate, that the names and records be destroyed. So we don't have these lists sitting out
What
there.
would that look like then? And we can put that to Member Straight, but let's see what it looks like first, and then we can see if it's in order as a potential friendly or substitute. Yes, Member Straight, let's go to you.
Encapsulates what I was trying to get at.
All right, let's see what that language looks like if we could. I think I know what it is, but and then we'll just make sure it's in order.
Yes, I'd be happy to repeat it. I think this would give UPAC time. I move that once UPAC determines not to investigate, that names and records be destroyed.
That's okay. So that's a friendly to the amendment if there is no objection. Is there any objection to allowing that as a friendly? If not, then we can allow it and then open it to discussion. So, Member Lear, to that newly changed motion.
Two concerns. One, I don't like the shoulds in there. It says should on the board.
So it just says the schedule directs staff. There was no should intended? Okay, that's just a clarification. Okay,
Will or direct, okay.
as stated, that's a will.
That's one concern. The second one is, right now, we've got at least a year backlog on most of the UPAC cases, 9 months to a year. We can see that from our UPAC cases when we review them. I'm not comfortable letting UPAC hang on to those until they get around to investigating.
They have to. But they're making a decision on every single one of these people. It's not
I
like.
see Director Rasmussen leaning in. There we go. I'm
I would just add that, if UPAC determines to investigate, then we open a case, and then it would be an official case. But if we determine not to open a case, it's pretty quick. I mean, it's not like it's a prolonged decision whether or not to open a case.
So the language as framed at the bottom there would fit in with your understanding of how this would work or is intended to work? I'm sorry, let me get Director Rasmussen. I just want to see if this fits the flow of how you saw this operating within UPAC. Okay.
Can we remove the word should? It's just names be destroyed. Determines not, so.
Oh, okay. So
that
the
the
other
board
should
directs
comes
staff
out
to
too.
establish a retention schedule to reflect that once UPAC determines not to investigate, that the records and names be destroyed.
Got it. Okay. And that's just a clerical
Then if they need
clarification.
6 months, a year to figure it out, after they get all the information from the LEA, then that's the time they need. But
Strike
once
it.
they decide, then it's gone.
Member Lear, Member Carey, are you on this or? Okay.
I'm a little troubled with the trust me standard. We won't hold it for very long. I wish we had had the opportunity to discuss this with real teachers in real classrooms to see how they feel about this, because I still have some concerns. This is better than the original motion, I feel like, but I am more protective of teachers, even who may have done bad things in terms of their due process rights. But and so I would reluctantly support it, is I guess what I'm saying.
Okay. Member Carey, were you speaking to this?
I have more of a parliamentary procedure question.
Okay.
So my question would be, I agree with the language set forward by Board Member Davis. So in addition to amending the motion to amend, is it possible just to amend the primary motion?
So if I withdrew, that would put Cindy's in place, right?
So yeah, we've got Member Carey's, then Member Straight. Member Davis is a replacement of Member Straight's as a friendly amendment, correct? I'm looking to my parliamentarians. We got Member Carey and then Member Davis on the floor. So Member Straight's was withdrawn. Member Davis passes. It substitutes in for Member Carey's, correct? If it passes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, any further discussion to the motion? As framed up, I don't see lights. Again, raise your hand physically since we got some folks in line for other motions. Member Klein, okay, that's to this? Gotcha.
It's about this, but not, my question is there a time frame for keeping negative observations about students in their personal records? And is there any expiration date on those if they are found unsubstantiated? I'm just wondering from the
So I
student.
don't know that goes to this. We don't have any student data or records. but
Right,
Can we
it's-
put that in the hopper?
But I'm just, as a future discussion possibly,
Okay,
so that it
Let-
doesn't stay on a student record forever.
okay. Can we put that in the list of questions? I'm not sure who to direct that to, but we've got it on record to review later. Okay, it doesn't go directly to this, but a separate but similar question about student. Okay. Further discussion, again, let's go with physical hands because I think most of the lights are for other motions. So seeing none, the motion then, as brought by Member Davis to amend, is that the board directs staff to establish a retention schedule to reflect that once UPAC determines not to investigate, that the records and names be destroyed. Let's vote.
Hold on, because we changed the motion a lot, so hold on.
Sorry.
I do.
I'm not seeing it on.
If, I have a
Okay.
question.
Voting is open. Wait, sorry. Nope, sorry. Not quite. Let's wipe the screen then of those votes. Okay. We were. There we go. Voting is open. Oh, Member Green. Member Green on the motion.
Yeah.
Sorry, say again.
Yes.
Yes, Member Green's a yes. Okay, that completes the voting. It's unanimous. That passes. All right, let's see. Next in line for other motions are Bogus and Wood. Let me get that the right order.
Yeah, I have a
Oh, sorry. Okay, that replaced. Well, it amended Member Carey's motion. Do we need a second vote then? Okay. Right, okay, because it's a motion to amend. All right, so, yes, you're correct. All right, so the language is the same. So we are voting again on the same language now as the amendment to Member Carey's underlying motion, which basically disappears because it's replaced by this language, correct? Okay, so the motion again is that the board directs staff to establish a retention schedule to reflect that once UPAC determines not to investigate, that the records and names be destroyed. And let's close out and then vote again. Okay. Member Green?
Yes.
Member Green's a yes. I'm missing one. Did I vote? Yeah, I did. Are we missing anybody? There we go. Voting is unanimous. That passes again. Back to the floor. And I think we were turning to Member Bogus, correct? Yes, back to you, Member Bogus.
Okay, so, before I make my motion, I would just offer that maybe this should be sent back to committee, but after that, I have a motion. So I move that, in lines number 45 through 47, and, just to answer your question, Superintendent Stallings, this was sent, on October 3rd. And your name is listed on that email, just in case. I would like to amend lines 47 through 45 through 47 to strike the word or after using, and after the word influence, insert the words or experiencing the residual effects of alcohol or an illegal drug. And with a second, I'd like to speak to the motion.
It's been a second. Back to you, Member Bogus.
Thank you. So I think that we can all acknowledge that if you are hungover or are experiencing the residual effects of getting stoned the night before, you should probably not be in front of students.
Okay. Further discussion to that motion. Let me just see it and then we'll.
I think. Sometimes people own it.
May I ask a question?
Question, Vice Chair Earl?
Yeah, I guess I'm reading this maybe different than you. Tell me if I'm not reading this right. This is what it currently says. Possessing, using, or under the influence of alcohol or an illegal drug. I'm reading that as under the influence, which should include alcohol and illegal drug. Am I reading that incorrectly? Is that how you would read that as well, Ben, when you would look at a case?
Oh,
This applies to both alcohol and drugs. I think what Member Bogus is trying to clarify is that the threshold shouldn't be as high as under the influence, but that is that correct? Under the influence is defined at either 0.05 for alcohol, or there's specific language for drugs. I think experiencing the residual effects would be something to be hung over, would be the more common way of putting it.
Okay. So is residual effect, is that understood then? That's where I'm trying to understand, to make sure there's no ambiguity, so that it's like 2 days later and I've got a cold, right, and I'm having a residual effect of the medications, whether it's a cold medicine with it's made me drowsy. Is that then? Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Or is under the influence understood? So that's where I'm trying to create a question there.
Under the influence.
It is defined? Okay.
okay, member, let's see. We have anybody else on this motion? Member Reel?
Thank you. Yeah, I worry about this motion because the way that it's written is more objective, and as we were discussing about the limits of alcohol and being under the influence. But this, I think, as Member Earl was saying, adds ambiguity. And I worry about folks, someone sees that a teacher had a beer on Sunday night and Monday morning they assume that they're hungover, which is unfair. So I would not be in favor of this motion.
Okay, anybody else on this motion? Member Lear?
Same substance as Member Reel's comment.
Okay, Member Klein?
I'm wondering if instead, if we just added experiencing debilitating residual effects. I stumble all the time, obviously.
Is that a proposed friendly?
It's a proposed friendly. Replace the with debilitating.
Any objection? And Member Bogus, would that be? No objection from the maker. Any other objections from the floor? Seeing none. That's no objection. So that's a friendly. Okay, Member Earl?
I'm still trying to, would that not still be under the influence? That's what I'm trying to say is, does that not cover that? Or does this add something, do you feel like it adds something more that isn't already covered? I'm just trying to make sure making sure we understand when these go to UPAC.
Right. Well, I'm thinking, and maybe we could add a little more clarity by saying experiencing, and maybe we go back to and experiencing the residual effects of said use to the point that it impairs their ability to do their job effectively. I don't know. That's just thoughts.
So let's see, is that another proposed friendly? And is it a friendly?
I don't know how that would fit in, so I can't answer that question. So can we do
Okay.
definition of under the influence?
Do we have a definition? Anybody out there among staff? Member Earl's asking whether we have a definition somewhere.
I just want to be able to weigh it against this to see if it incorporates it or if we need this more square.
So I don't see acceptance as a friendly. Just to go to Member Klein's suggestion, I don't see that accepted as a friendly. Did you want to take other action? Actually, I don't think we can. We're on our second amendment, right? So, okay, back to you,
Yeah.
Member Klein.
So experiencing debilitating residual effects that impair normal function.
Chair? To Member Earl's question, can I?
Well, we have one question. Let me just make sure we're procedurally, we had a proposed friendly, another friendly. Question is whether it's a friendly by the maker, Member Bogus, or whether anybody else objects. Then we can go back to the question, Member Bogus.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. So there's been an objection. It can't be a friendly. I think we're out of amendments. Am I right there, AEG Buse?
So, sir, may I?
Or others? Let me just make sure I get the procedural. Are we out of amendments? Well, I know, but if it's not friendly, then one more. Okay, we have one more amendment available. Member Bogus, and we have Member Lear.
So it would be my observation that perhaps we are overthinking this. So for example, and I'll give you examples. You want to have a beer, that's your business. But if you get hungover and come and complain of headaches and you're yelling at kids all morning because that affected your ability to do your work the next day, that is a concern. If you want to get stoned on the back porch, again, that's your business. It's against the law, but that is your business. If you're coming to school with bloodshot eyes because of that experience, that is not appropriate. And so I personally object to the word debilitating, but I think that you can come to work hungover, not be over the legal limit, and still have the effects of that experience affect your work. And that is my concern.
Thank you. Let's go to Director Rasmussen. He had some context here.
I could do that.
Can you hit it one more time?
There we go. I just wanted to point out the definition of under the influence because I really think that the one paragraph here actually kind of covers this. A person is under the influence of alcohol and illegal drug or the combined influence of alcohol and drugs to the degree that it renders the person incapable of effectively working in a public school. So I think if they're experiencing the residual effects to the point where it would keep them from working properly, they're under the influence by our definition. So I think our definition probably already covers the concern here. That's in R277210, paragraph 50.
That's where the definition is?
That's the definition for this rule.
Go ahead, sure. Oh.
So, sir, then would it be more effective to experiencing residual effects per R277210's definition, or some language to that effect?
R277210 already by its own language provides all the definitions for this rule, so we don't need a reference back because that's the way the rules are written. It's already incorporated by the board into 217.
Okay, so the definition of that's in Rule 210. What is that you were reading from? Okay, so 210 is the section to which all of these, I presume a number of these standards of teacher conduct include terms that are defined in Rule 210, and same section therefore would apply throughout. Okay.
So could he please read that definition for me one more time?
Yeah, Director Rasmussen.
Under the influence means that a person is under the influence of alcohol and illegal drug or the combined influence of alcohol and drugs to a degree that renders the person incapable of effectively working in a public school.
Then I would withdraw the motion.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
thank
I
you.
did not connect those two. I appreciate the
No,
opportunity.
that's helpful. Thank you. No, good exploration.
And
Thank
I
you
would
for-
move to my next motion, sir.
All right, let's kick it to member.
Do we have to vote on it or not? I guess if
Well, if it was withdrawn without objection, okay. Let me go to Member Wood and then come back. How many do you have, Member Bogus? We just want to make sure we spread the joy among all our board members.
12.
12.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go to Member Wood. You
Like
have
I
one.
said.
All right, Member Wood. Oh. You live? Okay.
I move that the board insert before line 206, the executive secretary shall classify allegations received under subsection 1 or subsection 2A as private in accordance with subsection 63G-2-302 2D.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second. Okay, we've got a few seconds. Back to you to discuss the motion.
So what this does is that it makes that record that's being created once an allegation has come in, it makes it private, so it's not grabbable.
Okay, discussion, question, comment to that motion? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. You might just have to give me a old fashioned, because I don't know who's, I think Member Carey might be.
Oh, go to member straight. It does.
Okay, Member Straight. Member Carey, you got the red, so let's.
Thank you. If I can ask a question to Director Rasmussen, Chair.
Yes, please.
Would this amendment in any way impair the purpose or goal of this rule generally? Does it make UPAC's job harder, more difficult?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Straight.
I like the idea of the protection, but I wonder if it's necessary. Isn't that already the law in employment issues like this?
Could we put that to Director Rasmussen? Is that a question you could answer? Or me?
There are other parts of the rule where we classify parts of the UPAC file as one thing or another, so I think this is perfectly appropriate.
So maybe I could just follow up. Shall classify allegations received under 7102 as private? So I guess the question from Member Carey was, would this inhibit at all UPAC's ability to investigate if they saw a reason for it, to take action if they saw a reason for it? Wouldn't alter anything that's already done under the standard protocol. It would just ensure confidentiality, privacy for this process. That's okay. Anybody else? Any other comments, questions to this motion? If not, the motion is for Member Wood to amend draft 4 that the board insert before line 206. C, the executive secretary shall classify allegations received under subsection 1 or subsection 2A as private in accordance with subsections 63G-2-302 2D. I think we can vote.
Green is no.
Green is a no. Vice Chair Earl.
Oh, I thought I did. Sorry.
Uh-huh. All right, voting is complete. That passes 13-2. The noes being Member Klein and Member Green. Back to Member Bogus. And if you let me just invite, if there are clusters that work together, that could be helpful. I don't want to muddle the debate on any particular amendment, but if for efficiency's sake there are some that belong together, we might be able to tee those up. Member Bogus. Oh, there we go.
So I would like to move in line number, I believe it's 72. That the words acting, or no, and an LEA's policy be struck, and with a second, I'd like to speak to the motion.
Sorry, line 7.
I believe it's 73 in draft 4. Draft 4 was moved, is that
I
correct?
don't see it. Yeah, I see draft. Line 73 is in subsection 22. Which subsection are you focused on? Is it
I am
subsection
on
25?
I am on page 3, line 73 in draft 4.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were.
It's not on 72, it's on 73.
There we go. 73. We found it. So line 73. Are we right? Sorry, I was off.
Yes, sir, that is, what is on the screen there is correct. I would like to strike the language, and an LEA's policy.
Okay, is there a second? Klein's a second. Back to you, Member Vargas.
Thank you,
Speak to the
sir.
motion.
I think we have two things going on here. One is we're redundant because policies should be in line with the law, but in the case that policies are not in line with the law should trump, and we shouldn't have something that gives the finger pointing endeavors room to take root and reign. And so I think that it encourages our LEAs to have policies that are compliant with the law, and if it is one level up that is the problem,
then the board can deal with one level up as that works its way through UPAC. But the LEA's policy should be compliant with the law. So to me, that is redundant and gives rise and space for I call it the finger pointing exercises to take root. There's a musical that I would love to sing for you, but I'll leave that to Randy Booth.
Please do. Duets are welcome. All right. Any discussion of that motion? Member Lear?
I'm going to say this until you're sick of me saying it, but every amendment that goes to these standards is troubling to me because these were thoughtfully, intentionally discussed with a room full of stakeholders. And we weighed, and a number of attorneys were involved. So the group weighed the legal implications of these at the time and also the real life implications of them. Just to speak to this specific example, an LEA could have a policy about something like assessment or something like maybe grading practices. And it is completely reasonable for the employer to tell the employee, you don't get to badmouth your employer's grading scale or grading practices or assessment standards or assessment practices. If they do that, that becomes insubordination. It's not against the law, it's not a First Amendment issue, but it's one of those employment law issues where the employer has the right to expect support from its employees. So that's the kind of thing that an LEA policy might provide or support, but is not necessarily a First Amendment issue, a constitutional issue. And so I very much like leaving in there an LEA policy that tells the employee what our expectations are for you. And yes, those policies should be consistent with the law. They can't tell a teacher you can never go to a board meeting and speak against a proposed bond or those kinds of things. But they can tell an employee, you can't badmouth our practices for assessment to your students, to parents, etc.
Okay, thank you, Member Lear. Member Bogus?
May I respond and
Sure.
query Member
Sure.
Lear, wouldn't that assertion come under the law?
Maybe, in my opinion, sorry. Oh, I need to push it. Thank you. In my opinion, it might. I think this is one of the times that it helps to clarify that, because one school district, one LEA may not have a problem with a more open or free exchange, or they may have a different standard for insubordination than another LEA. So I think it's appropriate to let the LEA control its employees in ways that are consistent with the law, and that might be done in a policy. So I do not want to detract from what an LEA establishes as an employment practice with its employees.
Okay.
And
Further?
again, it's the
Member Hymas.
collaboration, I'm sorry, to follow up. And again, it's the collaboration factor that took place as these words were carefully selected that I am really reluctant to interfere with without another opportunity to do that.
All right, Member Hymas.
Thank you. I'm going to speak against this motion as well. The LEA cannot make policy against the law, but the LEA does need to establish a culture within its environment, and this provides that. To Member Lear's, I'm not going to repeat everything she said, but to her point, an LEA does need that flexibility in order to create an atmosphere or a culture within the school that, of course, cannot and will not go against the law.
Okay, further, I'll make one comment. I think that the need to ensure compliance with the law is strong. I would worry that a teacher would be within the LEA policy and then be disciplined for having a different standard applied. I think 114, which is being sent back to committee, has provisions. If an LEA is out of compliance, then that's something that might be looked at for a potential corrective action plan. And there's another way of going about that while protecting the teacher from having two different standards. Member Klein, did you have a comment to this?
My question.
Okay.
But I'm in line.
Okay. Any further discussion of this motion? If not, let's vote. The motion is that the board strike the words "and an LEA's policy" on line 73. Please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Thank you. And voting closed. That motion fails 10-5. The yeses being Earl, Carey, Green, Klein, and Bogus. Back to you, Member Bogus.
73. I would like to change the word "and" to "or." And with a second, I would like
there
to
a
second
second?
the motion. 66 and 73.
'66 and '73. Is there a second?
In line
Second.
60.
It's to change the or change the "and" in both line 66 and 73 to an "or." Okay, and I heard a second from Member Green online. It's an "and" to an "or" on both of those lines. All right, we've got a second. Go ahead, Member Bogus.
I think it goes back to the same concern that when we link these together, we give rise to fertile ground for finger pointing. And there are LEA policies that are in contravention to code. It may not come out for a while, and I think UPAC can do their due diligence to make those conclusions and draw those conclusions. But law trumps policy, and when we create fertile ground for finger pointing, I think we've failed in what we need to do as an oversight agency. And so I would offer that we need to unlink those two as the way it's stated to me. I'm going to shut up. I apologize.
Any further discussion, comment to that motion? Or do we want to tee it up for a vote? We've got a number. I want to make sure we hear comment and then vote. Okay, let's vote. Motion is that the board strike the words "and," nope, excuse me. Motion is to amend to change "and" to "or" on lines 66 and 73. The motion is open for voting.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. That motion fails 10-5, with the yeses being Green, Klein, Earl, Bogus, and Carey. Thank you. Back to you, Member Bogus. Member Klein?
Yes, I would just like to make a motion to strike at the end of line 66, the and strike all of line 67.
Okay, I don't think that is duplicative. It's similar, but same section, different amendment, right? So it would strike and line 67 to just say only exposed sensitive materials as defined in section 53G-10-103. Is there a second? Hearing none. There is a second. Back to you, Member Klein. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I think in line 66, where it says as defined in section 53G-10-103, if LEAs if their policies have to follow the law, then 67 is unnecessary.
Okay, any further discussion? Member Davis, and then let's see. Yes, Member Davis, and then Member Hymas.
Yeah, am I understanding correctly that the law is a minimum standard, and board rule sometimes adds some clarification to that, and LEA policy can add even more expectation to that. So I worry a little bit about if we do like an and or we take out the LEA policy that kind of gives an illusion of freedom that might not legally be there.
Thank you. Member Hymas?
Thank you. And this is precisely the reason I voted to keep the "and" in there, is because we need the LEAs. The exactly like Member Davis said, the minimum is the law, and LEAs should have the ability to say, well, you know, I actually would like to go a little bit further and protect my kids a little bit further, right? So I speak against this motion.
Okay. Any further discussion of this motion? If not, let's vote. The motion is to amend that the board strike the word "and" on line 66 and strike line 67. It's open for voting.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. And that motion fails 11-4. The yeses are Carrie, Booth. Wait, sorry. Carrie. Those are the noes. I'm sorry. The noes are Carrie. Let's do the yeses. Here we go. The yeses are Earl, Green, Bogus, and Klein. Excuse me. Okay. Any further motions to amend? Mac 2, Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. In lines number 94, 95, I believe, I would like to strike the word actively, reinstate the word political, and then strike the amendment in blue in a manner inconsistent with the policy of the educators LEA.
Okay.
And I do believe the staff has that. I just think the line numbers have changed, if I am correct. Okay.
All right. Is there a second? Do we have it framed up there first so we know what we're seconding? Let's see. Does that look right, Member Vargas?
I'll second that.
Yes, sir.
We got it up there. Okay. We have a second. Back to you to speak to the motion.
Thank you, sir. So I did listen to the debate in the motion to replace political with partisan. And my concern is that we've conflated civic and political and made them synonymous with one another. And to me, they don't mean the same thing. And so I think the word political needs to be in there. I do also would agree that partisan disparagement should also be in there, but I do believe the word political should be added back in. There is, to me, the word actively is almost redundant. Everything a teacher does is active, and it implies that these one-off situations are not active. They are active, and we need to acknowledge that and have our educators be accountable for that. And then the last striking, this last language puts us again back in the realm of we have LEAs that have policies that are inconsistent with Utah code. And when we put this language in here, we create fertile ground for finger pointing. And so, Member Davis makes great points, but I still think it comes back to if we're not going to put out model policies that all of our LEAs have to use, then we have to keep that in our court. And so I would offer that the LEA's policy needs to become compliant with the law. And it can go beyond the law, but it needs to be compliant with the law. And we do not want to give fertile ground to finger pointing in this arena. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Discussion to the motion? Member Earl, Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through what we're saying here because the LEA puts a policy in place so that educators have a clear understanding. And I understand what you're saying too, because you're saying it could be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think an educator is going to look to the LEA's policy prior to going through 53G, 53, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out the balance there between when it would be breaking the law and when the clearness of an LEA's policy needs to be put in place. And if it's the LEA's policy, that's different than anyways. So I think there needs to be a strong policy because that's where educators are going to look. So I'm just telling you inside, this is where my thought process is going as I'm hearing this over and over. These policies have got to be right, right? But if we take it out, then what does it leave is my question. So anyways.
Further discussion?
Would Chair Earl like me to answer that question?
Would you,
or
is that a rhetorical or a question for Member Bogus? Semi-rhetorical, but feel free to respond.
I think that what it leaves is the umbrella. So, Vice Chair Earl, I guess maybe an example, because sometimes a story helps us understand. So, for example, the policy on lines 93 through 96 may be sound. An LEA may have a sound policy in that area, but they have a secondary policy that actually instructs teachers to act in a way in contravention to that policy. And that has occurred many times in this state as well, where one policy says you can't, the other policy says you have to. And then once again, we are finger pointing in he said, she said, and moving forward. And so I would like to strike those words so that the law ultimately reigns and we don't give loopholes or again, fertile ground to finger pointing for nefarious behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make the same comment. I'll keep it brief, but I think 114 has a process as it's drafted to look at an LEA. If the LEA is out of compliance with the law, I think that you're exactly right. That needs to be corrected, and that's a process that's available. My worry is that you have a teacher that's following their LEA's policy, and then we tell them, no, that wasn't really where the line was. That to me is concerning. So I think both of those are critical, but I would oppose it just for that reason. Any further discussion to that motion? If not, let's tee that up for a vote. The motion is that the board amend line 94 to strike the word actively, reinstate political, and lines 95, 96 to strike the phrase in a manner inconsistent with the policy of the educators LEA. Voting is open and almost closed. While I was still trying to figure out my...
Green is yes.
It's in there.
What did she say? Yes?
Green's a yes. And with voting closed, that fails 12-3. The yeses being Green, Bogus, and Klein. Back to you, Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. In line 115, I would like to add, and I must apologize, I'm not seeing this on my list. I would like to strike the word and then after local laws, put board rule.
Is there a second?
Ethical code of conduct.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Jumped in.
Ethical code of conduct. Semicolon, and I believe I missed the word and.
I did suggest it.
Sir, may I comment to Director Rasmussen?
This is a question on framing up the language of the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're not speaking to, we haven't had a second yet, but go ahead.
Director Rasmussen, I would like to add board rule, the ethics code, and then the quote, code of conduct. Did I articulate that well? So the ethics code is the assessment that educators take when they, and maybe I'm in a different space and place, but there's an ethics assessment that we take when we renew our credential. And then the code of conduct is the model policy that districts are required to have. And there's one that the state made and they can go beyond the one the state made, but they cannot have lesser than what the state made.
So the assessment you take when you renew your credential, if I may, Chair,
Please.
is just is meant to just cover the code of conduct. It's not a separate set of standards educators need to follow. It's just seeing if they understand the code of conduct. So I don't think that would fit there.
So then,
And the code of conduct itself is part of board rule, which is already part of state law, which is why that wasn't specifically entered there. But the code of conduct is R277-217, which we're debating right now. So that's part of board rule.
So, sir,
Yes, Member Bogus.
if that is the case, then I'm not going to quibble with the ethics, but the code of conduct is, to me, different from the educator standards. To me, they're two different documents, which would mean they would be two different things. So each
Member-
LEA has a code of conduct that's derivative of the model policy that the state puts forth.
Do you need clarification from? So we're referencing an LEA code of conduct, or?
Yes, and thank you for that. I'm sorry that wasn't on the list.
Do we have that the way you want it, Member Bogus? Add board rule and LEA code of conduct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry, that was very loud.
Discussion. Did we get a second? Do we have a second for that one? Member Klein and I think Member Green, okay. Any discussion of the motion? That was mostly just clarifying, so Member Bogus, still to you. You sort of spoke, but it was mostly just clarifying what you wanted. Do you want to speak to it now that we got it up there?
Yes, I just think that we come back to clarity. And oftentimes we see things that come through UPAC where there have been violations, but because it's not in here, then it's not counted or engaged or considered as a part of the process of determining, because we haven't delineated that. And so I just think we should delineate it, make it very clear that is required conduct.
Okay, further,
Not
Vice
laid
Chair
out.
Earl?
Sorry, I'm trying to understand this. So we're going to get rid of LEA policy. Well, that's the suggestion, but the LEA code of conduct is going to be spot on. I'm just trying to figure out that to me,
So-
it seems a little bit not consistent.
To me,
Okay.
the code of conduct referred to the model policy that LEAs are required to adopt that has been approved by this board. And I did not use the words LEA, but I'm not going to quibble with them because I know that it's a state-approved code of conduct, and they can make it more strict, but they cannot come in conflict with it. So in this arena, I think we're looking at something significantly different because the policy is mandated by the Board of Education.
Okay, further discussion on that motion? If not.
I have some.
Oh, Member Lear.
Emily
Oh, sorry, Member Green, we'll come to you next.
I think staff, maybe I'm more inclined to be argumentative than the staff is, but state law per the Administrative Rules Act includes properly promulgated rules as state law. So in saying that we'll follow state law, it includes board rules, it includes any other rules that are applicable that are appropriately promulgated. Secondly, the code of conduct per state law was required for all state employees a couple of years ago in a statute. So there is in a bill. So there is now a required code of conduct for all state employees and elected officials, I think, also. So the codes of conduct are now required by state law, and so those are all covered. So individualizing, pulling little pieces of this out are unnecessary. They're all part of state law.
Okay, anybody further to this motion? If not, let's vote. The motion is to amend, add board rule.
Member Green
and-
wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Member Green. I totally forgot. We had you in line. Go ahead.
No worries. That's just fine. I just wanted to say that I do believe that there are problems sometimes with this area, like code of conduct. And to clarify that, I think is helpful. I fear right now we might be coming a little bit deaf to motions that are happening. And I hope that we might really listen to what is trying to be communicated here. There are a lot of things that slip through the cracks in the school system right now. And I do believe that if we take a minute to just really zone in on what constituents are saying, problems that kind of keep arising and presenting themselves to us, that we have an opportunity to iron out maybe some quirks that are going on in our system. And I do believe that this is one of those areas. So I do support this, because I also believe that there's a lot of finger pointing that happens. I believe that a lot of problems aren't fixed because there's not a place to land where accountability should be given. So I hope, we might consider those things as we develop these rules, that we can be specific so that when problems arise, we do have a place where it can land, accountability is given, and we've done our due diligence to make sure that we've quality checked that and provided that opportunity.
All right, thank you, Member Green. Anybody else? Did I get everybody? If not, we can vote. The motion is to amend to add board rule and LEA conduct to line 115. Voting is open.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Gotcha. Two more votes. Oh, we missed Member Reel. Okay. We got one more. Who else are we missing? Oh, we got 14. Okay. That fails. It's a tie 7-7, which means it fails. The yeses is did we give a call for Member Reel? Member Reel, if you're in earshot, we're voting and we have a split decision. Not sure if she's out of the loop. Okay. So that fails. The yeses are Davis, Carey, Hymas, Green, Klein, Moss, and Bogus. Okay, back to Member Bogus.
Joyce. Thank you, sir. In line 120, I would like to change, I move that the board changes the word prevent to mitigate. And with a second, I would like to
Is there a second to that? Seconded. Back to you, Member Bogus. Change prevent to mitigate.
I'm sorry. This one. Oh, my language was to strike it altogether.
Did we have that already? Was that a prior motion?
It's a prior made motion. I just want to make certain that I. 17.
Did we tee that up and vote on it? Did I lose track? Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right. So this is new. Okay.
I think at this time, I may come back to that motion, but with a second, I would like to speak to the motion as it's stated to change the word prevent to mitigate.
Do we have a second? Second.
Second.
Back to you, Member Bogus.
So in my previously submitted motion, I did want to move to strike that entire section, and part of it is because I think it's untenable. Not necessarily B, but take prompt and appropriate action to prevent. And that word implies that teachers can literally control, like minions, students or their peers. And that's not true. I can do everything that I can to mitigate situations in the school, but I can't actually prevent them from happening short of removing individuals from a situation. And I don't view the words as synonymous. I think we need to take actions to mitigate, but to ask someone to prevent, that's like saying SPF is fully waterproof. It is not waterproof, it's water resistant. And those two words are different in my opinion. And I think we need to give our educators the latitude to mitigate, but expecting prevention in this arena, I don't think is appropriate. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
There we go. Vice Chair Earl.
And I understand where you're coming from. I attended a safety thing a few weeks ago, and they had talked about what had prevented sexual harassment in the military, what things they did that in I don't even, what do you call them? Where's Scott? Regiments? I don't know, that actually decreased, if not eliminated, the sexual harassment. And it was the prompt and appropriate action was what prevented. So taking, it wasn't getting rid of, like, you're not going to ever have it happen. It was taking prompt and appropriate action that prevented additional harassment or additional discrimination. So I actually think this is one of those things that we want schools to take prompt and appropriate action, because it does prevent, it lets other students and educators know that when this happens, there are consequences. So I would speak against it. I can see where you're coming from, but I do think that because of the words before it, it actually leads to that happening. It actually prevents. So in a culture that is prompt and appropriate does lead to preventing. So.
May I respond,
Back to
Chair?
Member Bogus, yes.
I would offer that Vice Chair Earl makes a good point, but that's not how this reads. It reads that teachers must take prompt and appropriate action, and that if that action does not result in prevention, then we've got problems. And action does not always result in prevention. It's just a reality. Our educators can do everything they possibly can, including responding to situations in bold and immediate ways. And students make their own decisions in the way they behave. And those students need to be accountable for their actions. And I don't want to put that on an educator. I think that educators should mitigate. I think that should be what they are accountable for. But to be held accountable for prevention, I think, is a step too far.
Okay, AAG Buse has come up. You have a comment for us?
I think this language comes from what OCR's directives are in terms of their investigations of harassment complaints. And what they actually say has to happen is you need to stop the harassment, mitigate the damage that was done, and prevent further harassment. And so if possibly we could put the words stop, mitigate, and prevent. I understand what you're saying, but the prevent is really something that is in the law, and that we need to take reasonable means to prevent it from reoccurring again. As a school, if you know or have reason to know that the harassment is happening, there is an obligation for the school to prevent it from happening again. So I'm just giving you that as information. I'm not saying how you need to amend it, or I'm just saying this is where that language comes from. So I hope that's helpful to you in understanding why that language was put in there.
Thank you, AAG Buse.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry. May I address the speaker? I appreciate that, ma'am. Thank you. And if I could amend my own motion, I do believe that language is probably more clear than even what I have put forth to stop, mitigate, and prevent.
You can offer that if there's no objection, as if your own friendly. Stop, mitigate, and prevent. Any objection to adding that in? Hearing none? Okay, but that's in then. So that's adopted as a friendly. And then do you have a comment to it?
Or would it be or prevent?
But you're the
Yeah, you want an
you're the
and?
maker.
I'm sorry, what's the question, sir?
So just you asked about and versus or. Do you want to leave it as an and?
So I believe that I was told and is necessary. Did I hear you correctly, ma'am? Okay, then I do believe.
Okay, Member Klein.
So I'm just looking at the way it reads, take prompt and appropriate action, and then we would say to stop, mitigate, and prevent. I just want to point out take prompt action means something's already happened, and we are now reacting to it promptly. It doesn't prevent. And it probably doesn't, and it doesn't necessarily stop. I mean, it might halt it in its progress, but it's already happening. So it might be better to rephrase the sentence so that it says take preventative or mitigating action when these things happen. I'm not sure exactly how to say that, but to take prompt action means something's already occurred. So you can't
So we've got language. Is this another friendly? And I think we'd have to turn back to the
Prompt does not
maker
prevent.
of the motion. I'm not hearing, is there any objection from the body?
I would object to this.
Okay, all right, we have an objection, so it's not a friendly, which means it needs to either brought as its own motion, brought to a vote, or we go back and look first at Member Bogus's motion, and then if that fails, there could be other action. So, all right, the motion is to change prevent to stop, mitigate, and prevent. I won't go too deep on this. I'll just say, each of those plays a role. In my experiences in workplace, Title VII's different, but you can stop it, meaning you stop it in its tracks so it doesn't happen again. You can prevent further action. You can mitigate the current stream of events. Each of these, I think, is defined and framed up by AAG abuse, can play a role in putting an end to the conduct we're trying to stop. So I'd speak in favor, but anybody else want to speak to this one? All right, if not, let's vote. The motion is already framed up. Change prevent to stop, mitigate, and prevent.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. That passes, one more. That passes 14-1, the no being Member Straight. Back to you, Member Bogus. Member Klein.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to make a motion on this same section to say take action to stop, mitigate, and prevent. It says take prompt and appropriate action. Instead, take action.
You delete prompt and appropriate. Is that the technical description of the motion?
So it would start different. Take action to stop, mitigate, and prevent.
So we're striking prompt and appropriate then?
Yes.
That's okay. Striking the words prompt and appropriate on line 120. Is there a second?
I would second it because I want to hear.
Second it. Any discussion of the motion?
May I
I'm
speak?
sorry, to the maker. Yes, I meant to direct to you.
Okay. So it just, grammatically, it just makes more sense to say that a teacher must take action to stop, mitigate, and prevent a student from any action. Like I said before, to prompt. Prompting doesn't prevent. So if we can put that up at the front instead of to take prompt, instead we say take action.
Sorry, that was my
you.
cue. Sorry.
So maybe that's take action to promptly stop, mitigate, and prevent. I don't know.
So if we could tweak slightly, the motion is to strike the words prompt and appropriate and insert prompt after, or promptly, to promptly prevent, correct? Take action to promptly stop, mitigate, and prevent.
Take action to stop, mitigate, and prevent.
I thought you had promptly in there somewhere, but, okay, so it's delete.
Protect the student.
All right, so we're just deleting prompt and appropriate.
So if we just take action to, and then her words, stop, mitigate, and prevent to protect a student. And if it continues.
Yes, Director Rasmussen.
It already says conduct towards students. Adding protect the student.
Let's just frame this up, Member Klein, just see if we've got you some specific language here that we can debate and vote on. Okay. And then the rest goes as stated. Okay, so technically, is this frame it up correctly? We're deleting the words prompt and appropriate and then letting the rest flow as is. Okay, any further discussion of that motion? Member Lear?
I have to defend the word appropriate. I think that it is, again, a principle of law that you have to act appropriately given the circumstances. You can't cut a student's hand off if he's moving to do something that's inappropriate. You can't push a student down if he's doing something that's inappropriate. So I think that the way it's written directs a student, and you have to read into that, which is reasonable, take prompt and appropriate action toward the end of mitigating, stopping, and preventing. So I like the way it was written, and appropriate is necessary.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, let's vote. The motion is to strike the words prompt and appropriate on line 120. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so we could leave in appropriate, so it would say, but we put it, yeah, so take appropriate action to stop, mitigate, and prevent.
So just be striking prompt.
Yes.
Any objection to that amendment? It's friendly by the maker. It's done then. So we're deleting the words prompt and on line 120. Okay, no further discussion. Let's vote. Member Green?
Green is a no.
Green is a no. That motion fails by 13 to 2. The yeses are Member Klein and Member Booth. Back to you, Member Bogus, is it? Member Klein? Where are we?
Sorry, thank you, sir. In backup, there's a motion to amend what is now lines 161 to 165 to read, to use classroom instruction and materials that are academically focused and in line with the student's 1, cognitive abilities, 2, intellectual capacity, 3, emotional maturity, 4, physiological aptitude, and 5, overarching cognitive motor skill sets.
Is there a second?
I'll
Not
second
hearing-
that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Member Green seconded. Back to you, Member Bogus.
I think that as we engage this, and this is actually language that I vetted through multiple educators, and specifically educators in the realm of special education and behavior disorders and emotional disorders, we often end up in a space and place as educators where the main thing is not the main thing. And even though perhaps a generally, what we would call a general education student in the 5th grade, it might be appropriate for them. But if you have a student with an IQ that is well below 70, they don't have the emotional maturity or the intellectual capacity to engage in the conversation or understand. And that's why even things such as maturation, certain students don't participate. And it doesn't mean they're not legally allowed to, but they don't because they don't have the emotional maturity to engage in those conversations. And so I think this puts us in a place and space where we draw an umbrella around it and we allow our students to be individuals instead of painting with a large, broad brush. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Discussion to that motion. I see lights, but I'm not sure if they're for that. Member Davis? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this philosophically 100%, and that's the responsibility of the IEP team to work to make sure that those things happen by law. But then also parents have rights. The LEA has to offer an appropriate cascade of services, but parents have rights not to choose that. And then you can't pigeonhole a parent into being forced to use the material at the child's cognitive level or such when they refuse and want that child to work in a different level, if I'm understanding correctly.
Thank you, Member Davis.
It's not, we're saying it's going there, it doesn't meet this criteria.
Any response, Member Bogus?
So I don't think this overrides what would be included in an IEP, Member Davis. I think we're speaking here about classroom materials that would otherwise be outside the scope for even a general education student, but this is language that would be inclusive of all students, including students with disabilities. It wouldn't override an IEP.
I know, but the parent can refuse the cascade of services. And then you're back stuck saying, well, I have to do this because it has to match your cognitive level.
So I would disagree with that assertion. I think it,
Which is how it happens in the field.
Okay.
well, I understand how it happens in the field. I just disagree with your assessment.
All right, good discussion. That's what it's about.
Okay.
We got different points. Any further discussion to that motion? Okay. The motion then is that the board amend lines 161 to 65 to read, use classroom materials and instruction that are academically focused and in line with the student's cognitive abilities, intellectual capacity, emotional maturity, physiological aptitude, and overarching cognitive motor skill sets. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Thank you. Okay, voting is complete. That motion fails by 12 to 3. The yeses are members Klein, Green, and Bogus. Any further amendments? Sorry. Further motions, member Bogus? Hey.
Lunch is waiting.
Before, oh. Come on. It's your final one. You're supposed to celebrate it with it. Okay. Fair enough. Member Bogus.
Thank you, sir. In line 200 and 201, I would like to strike the language from a parent.
Is there a second?
In line 200 and 201. I just think it should be any allegation. I don't think we should narrow the scope.
Is there a second? We can come back if there's a second, but I haven't heard one. Okay.
I'll second.
Second, back to you, member Bogus.
I guess I may be out of turn, sir. I apologize, spoke to the motion. I just think
Nope,
we're
you're
narrowing the scope there, and I think that if we're going to go down this path, as the board has chosen to do, that that the language should read: a district superintendent or charter school director, respective designees, shall notify the UPAC and the educator of any allegation. I think that our educators have the right to be notified of any allegation, not just allegations from parents. And so to me, it comes back to a due process issue and a notice that if you're under investigation from an allegation in any capacity, that should be noticed to both UPAC and the educator. I think educators should have access to any allegation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, discussion to that motion? Member Lear?
To be clear, I'm following Member Bogus's thinking, but my concern with this is shall notify UPAC. And I don't think it's appropriate to notify UPAC of any allegation. I think it was broadening it to include parent allegations, and that's as far as I'm willing to go in terms of adding to a workload of UPAC and being realistic of what allegations look like.
Okay, further discussion. I was in favor of it as originally drafted without the limitation. I think that's a compromise that came out in committee. I personally think it's a reasonable limitation. That's the main objective, is to make sure that parent complaints are being taken. We have transparency, so I can support it, even though I supported it more broadly before. Any further comments, discussion to the motion? Okay, so the motion is to amend lines 200 to 201 to strike from a parent. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Okay, that motion fails 9-6. The yeses are Vice Chair Earl, Member Wood, Carey, Green, Klein, and Bogus. Member Klein indicated you have a motion.
Why? 1, 2, 1, 2, 5, 7, 2. I don't know, apparently I need to approve this thing.
Okay. All right, I'd like to make a motion to amend lines 88 and 89 to read as follows. And I don't have the strikeouts, just this is how it will read, and then I'll let you figure that out.
Okay.
Okay. Invite, suggest, encourage, or provide curriculum, materials, activities, or discourse specific to sexual orientation, gender identity, or sexuality with a student. It currently reads invite, suggest, or encourage a student to reconsider or change the student's sexual orientation or gender identity. So this is just expanding that.
Is there a second? Oh, yeah, I am on. Is there a second? Not hearing a second.
Mostly just because I want to hear about it.
Okay. There's a second. Go ahead. Back to you, Member Klein.
We're blaming you this time.
Okay, I think this gets to the heart of a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the schools. Just like an educator is not allowed to encourage or try to promote a certain religion or ideology, but those things are already protected in law. But this is not currently covered, and so we need some language that helps with that, because just like we have sections that keep explicit sexuality from being discussed without parental permission, these things also have become an issue, and some would say that these are promoted or lived out much like a religion. And so if we have educators pushing this in any way through inviting or suggesting or encouraging or providing curriculum material, activities, or discourse specific to these areas, we end up with a problem. So educators should really remain neutral on this issue and not promote it in these ways.
Thank you, Member Klein. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing no lights, we can vote. The motion is to amend lines 88 to 90 to read, invite, suggest, encourage, or provide curriculum, materials, activities, or discourse specific to sexual orientation, gender identity, or sexuality with a student. Voting is open.
Green is a yes.
Green is a yes. And voting is closed. That motion fails. 8 against, 6 for, 1 abstaining. Member Straight abstaining. The yeses being Davis, Wood, Green, Hymas, Klein, and Bogus.
So can I just, a point of clarification?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, it is included in there already about the code and law around, so 53G 10, 403, and other sections. I just wanted to make sure it's not included in there. Right, that's why right.
So those pieces of code don't. This is necessary in order to make that aspect.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Do you want that on the record? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So the codes that are referenced are specific to sex education and explicit sexuality being taught regarding around the sex ed laws. Sexual orientation and gender identity, again, as we mentioned before, are only mentioned in the educator educator standards, where it talks about you can't discriminate against students because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. This is different and is not covered in those other sections of law that were referenced
Okay.
Right,
No,
but
we've
it's in
already voted.
24,
This
so.
is for the record. All right. Any further? I see none. Let's bring it back to the underlying motion. And we have, let's see, where's that framed up? The motion is basically to approve R277-217 as amended. Maybe that's all we need. Does that frame it up correctly? Any final discussion of the motion then? The motion is to approve R277-217 as amended. Seeing, Member Klein, does that go to this or is that left on? Oh, okay.
Okay, and I don't know that this was, on line 94, I would add, after actively, I would add or passively.
I would second that motion.
Seconded. Back to you, Member Klein. Any discussion of the motion? Any other discussion of the motion? Substitute motion, Member Davis.
To remove the word actively.
Member Davis's substitute is to remove the word actively.
So
That's a previous question.
Yeah.
but it was only a piece of it and I didn't divide then. And so this is isolated and I would move to remove the word actively instead of adding passively.
Okay, I'll double check with the parliamentarians. Is that in order as a substitute? A part of it was included prior, but not this specific motion. Sorry, member. Okay, I'll allow it. If it's up to me, we can vote on that one. Depending on what happens there, go back to the original. But unless somebody tells me that's out of line, I don't want to be crossing lines. So, sorry. Oh, well, let's tee it up. Was it seconded though? Member Davis's substitute. Member Booth will second. So this one then, the substitute is that the board amend line 94 to remove the word actively. Strike the word act. Okay. Member Lear, Member Wood, Member Hymas.
For maybe the maker of the motion. I think, yes, the maker of the motion. I actually liked the word actively in there because I think it appropriately clarified, endorse, promote, especially those. If a teacher is in a classroom and perhaps it's a smaller rural area or maybe not, the teacher is teaching in a neighborhood where she also lives and the students know that this teacher is the same religious affiliation that they are, maybe even a leader in their church. And if that teacher is in their teaching, is just her presence endorsing that particular religious profession or not profession, but position.
Yes. Go ahead, Member Davis.
Is that what, how would you interpret that?
I would not. That to me would be a passive. So, and some of those things you can't control, but all of those are verbs: endorse, promote, disparage. They're already actions. They're already active. Saying the word actively it is repetitious in my opinion. But if it helps to get rid of the word actively and leave those and then not put in passively, because what is passively? You have someone down the hall that tells you their opinion about this and you just choose not to argue to keep the peace. Are you then passively? And, I mean, that just gets into real unclear areas for me.
Can I respond briefly?
Okay, sure. Member Lear.
I don't want to
Let's.
further this unnecessarily, but I agree with you, and I didn't like the word passive for exactly those reasons. My concern is that without actively in there, it leaves teachers uncertain about if I just am being something, or I wear a symbol that's appropriately allowed of whatever I am, whether it's a religious symbol or a ideological symbol, then are you endorsing something in someone's mind, though you're not talking about it?
Go ahead, Member Davis.
The words in manner inconsistent with the policy of the educator's LEA, I believe, takes care of that concern. For example, in some LEAs, an educator is allowed to wear a pin on their person, but not allowed to put a flag on their wall or what have you. So I think the policies do help clarify those things.
Okay, any other board members with comments to that motion? Seeing no lights, the motion to amend is that the board amend line 94 to remove actively. Correct? I framed that up right? Strike actively. Okay, board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. We need two more. We got member Green, right? Did we record member Green? Okay.
Yeah.
Straight and okay. With voting closed, that motion fails by a vote of 8-7. The yeses being Klein, Green, Davis, Moss, Booth, Bogus, and Earl. All right, thank you. All right, that was a substitute. Does that revert us back or no?
Yes.
Goes back to the underlying motion, which was to strike, or sorry, not strike, but to add the Mord amend line 94 to add passively after actively. Right, so it says actively or passively. Okay. Actively or passively. We've had some discussion. Any further discussion to that motion? If not, let's tee it up and vote.
Yes.
Oh,
For Member
thank you, Member Green. Member Green's a yes. Got one more. The motion fails 13-2. The yeses are Klein and Green. With no, is there a light? Is there another motion?
There's another light. I have a quick question on line 99. Knowingly violate student confidentiality unless revealing confidential information to an authorized person serves the best interest of the student and serves a lawful purpose. I'm just wondering if that is being read as, or could be interpreted as meaning that the school can keep confidences for the student from the parent.
Is there any staff member that has an interpretation there? Director Rasmussen, thank you.
Only if it's lawful.
Okay.
In most cases, that would not be lawful, so I would.
But it-
So there are specific guidelines on when
if
it's
it were
lawful.
lawful for some reason to withhold.
But
If
it
there were
says,
something that required confidentiality by law, privilege, yes.
A lawful purpose, so.
okay. Well, may I comment?
Yes, please.
It says authorized persons. Is that defined somewhere? It's not so are parents considered authorized persons that can confidential information can be revealed to? And if so, is it only if the school deems that it's in the best interest of the student to tell the parent? Or is there some, but what does the law say on things like a student being transitioned or transitioning at school? Is that something that the school can tell the parent? Or is the parent not deemed an authorized person? And oftentimes the argument is made that it's not in the best interest of the student to tell the parent in a situation like that.
Director Rasmussen, are you aware of the situations in which a person can avoid disclosing to a parent?
No, I'd have to do research on that.
Buddy, I mean, my general understanding is some kind of immediate health risk or something from the parent, but I'm probably speaking from ignorance. Anybody know what the law says about when the person can avoid that, Member Straight?
If you go to line 113, if you go to line 113 and continuing all the way through the end of that section, it gives lots of understanding on that very thing.
Okay, anything further? Go ahead, Member Klein, yes.
On line 100, after information to a parent or after information to.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second that one.
You can't make, that's not rude.
I can't second it?
Well, you
I'm just kidding. All right, I'm kidding. What? Hold on. Are we speaking to the motion here or the propriety of the?
But it's not my role to say if it's
If
child abuse allegations.
okay, if it's legal to put out the motion she's offering. Okay, so we're going to speak to the motion. So the board.
May I?
I just want to make sure we frame it up that we can go at it. Yes, point of information.
So for clarity, you asked if there was ever a situation. I actually do have evidence of a situation where information was withheld from a parent. I don't necessarily need to bring that onto the public record, but I'd be happy to share it with you. To the motion, I'm wondering if we're not actually debating two fundamentally different things. And I don't know where the solution lies in this moment, but I think that Member Klein and Member Davis are both actively trying to address two different issues. Because if it is an issue of DCFS where a child has disclosed to a teacher that they have been struck, deprived, put in a cage, whatever that might be, you don't call the parent first. You as a mandatory reporter, you have an obligation to disclose private information to DCFS as a part of that process, and then that parent is allotted due process during that time frame. But I think we're actually debating two different things here with the same lines in this rule. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
May I?
Yes, Member Klein.
So in reading this, knowingly violate student confidentiality could also be speaking about data and sharing personally identifiable information without or to people that are not authorized, like in the case with FERPA, right? But I guess I bring this up because, so if, an educator is sharing data with people they shouldn't, or personal information.
That says it already.
It what?
That 97 addresses that.
Student data.
Okay, so student confidentiality then in 99, since that was addressed in the previous line, it sounds like secrets of a student. And so it could be viewed as allowing for kind of grooming type behavior between a teacher and a student, where a teacher is maybe asking for, personal conversations on inappropriate topics and asking a student, or a student confides in a teacher some private information like that, and now the teacher is obligated to keep it a secret, even if it's something that parents should or would want to know. So I just think because I don't know how to solve this problem, and I think it's a big enough issue that needs some serious clarification, that I would make a motion to send this back to committee for further work on this specific part.
So we have a motion on the table with your language. Is that an appropriate substitute to send back to committee? Parliamentarians. Member Klein's motion was pending with specific language. She's
To
bringing
add
a
a
motion
parent.
to add a parent. She's now brought a motion to send it back to committee.
I think the key thing is
Are we-
serves a lawful purpose.
Well, her motion, I just want to see if it's in order. Then we can go back to debating the underlying motion if it's not in order.
So
Is it in order to send it back to committee? Motion to commit is in order. So, all right. Motion to send back to committee. You say that is in order? Okay. All right. Discussion of that motion.
I would second it because I thought it was important.
Okay. Any other discussion of the motion? I would oppose because the legislature is expecting our input, and we've had a lot of discussion and compromise and some good input from a number of board members. So I think we're ready to make a vote on this and then have that informed legislative discussion on the motion, and that would be lost if we send back to committee. Member Hymas, you have a light on?
Yeah, I'd oppose going back to committee as well. I think that we have done a lot of work in there, and we've done a lot of work here today as well. Sending it back to committee for these lines here, which to me is clear. A parent, in most instances, is an authorized person. So I would speak against both motions, quite frankly.
All right. The one we have is on committing back or referring back to committee. If that fails, then we have one that addresses the use of the word parent. Further discussion of the motion to refer. Okay, if not, let's vote. The motion is to refer it back to committee.
Green is a yes.
Green is a yes. That motion fails 12-3. The yeses being Green, Klein, and Bogus. Back to the underlying motion from member Klein, which is add on line 100, a parent or after information to. Any further discussion of that motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Green is a yes.
Green is a yes. Thank you. We're missing one. There we go. Motion voting is concluded. The motion fails 10-5. The yeses are Green, Vice Chair Earl, Bogus, Carey, and Klein. Does that conclude the motions to amend? Seeing no lights, we have the underlying motion, which is to approve on second and final reading R277-217 as amended. No final discussion. We are... Member Klein? I'm sorry. Do we have other lights to address the underlying motion or to vote? Hearing no yes? Member Klein? Okay. Member Klein does have a...
I already asked, there's no definition for authorized person. That seems highly problematic. So is there a definition somewhere that we can add in?
Question to Director Rasmussen or others. Is there a definition of authorized person in line? Let's see. What number are we? 100. Sorry?
There's not a definition there. No.
As a lawful purpose, would that refer to whatever code defines the ability to disclose?
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to define that because there are any number of circumstances where there might be an unauthorized person. So I think it would be hard to pin that down. I think where you have the language lawful purpose, that limits that as to who you can provide that information to.
Okay. Any further insight, comment, discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Member Davis, sorry. Yes, the motion then on the floor is to approve R 277-217 as amended. Member Davis. No, are you speaking
Yes,
to this?
thank
Okay,
you.
there you go.
Yeah, I'll speak to the motion. I have gone back and forth. There are so many of these things that I like and so many of these things that I think are problematic, but I would hope that we don't open these up again unless we get a task force similar to what we've done in the past, where the organizations that are going to be impacted the most of people send their own representatives and choose their own representatives. But having said that, we've done a lot of work today. I feel like to make the rule more realistically implemented than it was before. And for that, I really appreciate the conversations that have happened today. And for those reasons, I'm going to be voting for the rule.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, members, let's vote. The motion is to approve on second final reading R 277-217 as amended. And voting is open. Member Green? Member Green?
No.
Member Green is a no. Okay, voting is complete. That motion passes by a vote of 10 to 5. The noes are Member Lear, Member Klein, Member Green, Member Bogus, and Member Reel. Okay, thank you. That concludes item number 5.3. Back to Chair Hymas or lunch?
Lunch. I want to take just a quick personal privilege.
Vice Chair Earl, yes.
Yeah. So, Board Member Lear, we got you a little get well present. I am going to show you what's in here, though, so that you can, a little gnome garden, so you can kind of do the Zen thing. Puzzle, friendship making bracelets, and then some model magic stuff, so that you can sit in one spot and do all kinds of stuff. So anyways, we're going to give that to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Earl. All right, thank you. Let's do lunch. Let's take half an hour. We'll be back at 1:45. Back to Chair Hymas, right?